So he listened to Born to Run and it's blasting. And he's talking on the phone. I don't know how he's hearing who he's talking to. I don't know how he's hearing the record or paying attention to it. So when it finally ends, I said, well, what do you think? He says, well, I like the riff. He says, I don't know too much about anything. I said, all right, look, I said, I'll get back to you in time. And I walked out, told Bruce, he was devastated. And what are we going to do now, Mike? I said, well, that's a good question. I don't know. I said, why don't you go home to Staten Island? Why don't you go home to Asbury Park? I'll go to my office. And if I think of anything, I'll get back to you. Well, just as I was entering my building, I did think, I said, supposing, since we made a load of friends at FM radio, I took the Born to Run master and sent that tape around to 50 of our friends in tertiary, secondary, primary markets, okay? And that they went on it, and they went on it. And they did go on it, 50 of them, okay? And when they went on it, it sent all the college kids running into the record stores to buy the album. There was no album, okay? So this is the mortal sin that a guy like me can commit on behalf of a record company, is to give them the single before the album's in the store.
This is the second part of my discussion with Mike Appel, Bruce Springsteen's first manager. I hope you've already listened to part one. If you haven't, stop, go listen to part one, then come back and listen to part two. Thanks. One of the things that frustrates me as a fan is I will discover a musician, or I'll discover a TV show, or I'll discover a book, and I'll almost be, I'll be prophesizing about it, right? I'm this voice of the wilderness saying, oh, this TV show is so great. Why aren't more people watching it? This musician is so great. Why aren't more people listening to it? So, and I'm not connected. So talk to me about, you've heard Bruce, you've determined the kid may have a little something, and you've decided, and then you're going out and you're young, you're full of energy, and you're trying to get people to notice, and it took a little time. So tell me some stories of those early days.
Well, it's like, well, it did and it didn't take time. Let me say it to you like that.
Okay.
What initially happened, I think, was that how do I put this in layman's terms? My expectations were such that it gave me kind of superhuman powers.
Okay.
To speak in the vernacular that you'll understand a little bit. Things opened up to me, so much so, not because of my desire, but because of my expectation. Bruce Springsteen was so good that I had expected everybody to like him. I didn't think he needed a band. I just think he needed him, his guitar, and his voice.
Okay.
Right? That was not to be, obviously. He obviously ended up with the E Street Band, and Clive Davis and Bruce both wanted it, and my partner at the time, Jimmy, wanted it. And me and Hammond were the only ones that were held out for Bruce. Just with his guitar would be sufficient. In retrospect, I think everybody was right. I was wrong. I think John was wrong with me on that one. In any case, that happened quickly. He got signed to the William Morris Agency quickly. Everything happened very, very quickly in the first month or two.
Okay.
Then reality set in. Now you got to go make this record. When you finish with that record, and you got to go out and you got to hit the road, and you got to most likely start from scratch. You got to go to bars.
Right.
Got to play bars. Now, of course, there were an abundance of bars back then that there aren't today. So you couldn't even do today the kind of things we did. But we did do that, and we started to build a little teeny following. Okay. The first record came out and kind of didn't make much of an impact. Then we did a second record and it didn't do much of an impact. And we were just barely staying alive because we had a good, great black manager at William Morris Agency who just loved Bruce Springsteen. He
Okay.
loved that. He loved that first album, and he wanted to. He got it in his head that he wanted to make this happen. He was a black man going to make the next Bob Dylan in his mind. Okay, that's what he was thinking. So
Okay.
I said, well, good, whatever whatever gets you on Bruce's side, I'll back that. So we kept going. Finally recorded Born to Run, and then the brakes were put on by the record label. They were not giving us attention because Clive Davis, our champion advocate, whatever you want to call him, got fired by Columbia Records because he had spent money on a bar mitzvah, from corporate funds, which should have been expended, for hiring, promotion men, not whatever the expenses were for the bar mitzvah. So he got fired. He went over to Arista, became a big success. Clive is what he is, but for us, that was a disaster because we lost our backer. And now what happens is now you're in with a load of guys who I actually like. A lot of those guys I like. Charlie Koppelman. I know you had Brian Koppelman on not too long ago. Charlie, his father, was a good old friend of mine, a great guy. He publishes some of my songs right to this day. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I've written for him. So I know just what I'm talking about when I said it.
Sure.
And his biggest writer was my best friend, and he was in two bands of mine, Alan Gordon, the guy that wrote all the Turtle hits, Celebrate for Three Dog Night.
Okay.
My Heart Belongs to Me for Barbra Streisand. Okay, whatever. All right, that's my friend Alan Gordon, great guy, terrific guy, funny fellow too. Now he's passed on. It's a shame, man. Really, colon cancer. And in any case, I'm just trying to think what was my point of bringing up Charlie Koppelman, or Brian Koppelman.
Well, because you were saying, and I take it you never lost faith. Like
That's
you,
correct.
even after the first two albums, you're like, people are gonna get this. I believe that this man has the talent.
Right.
The light switch will click, right? Sometime.
And at some time, right? But I'm an impatient guy.
Sure.
And so sometime wasn't coming fast enough to me. So I said to myself, well, let's start the third album. Let's see whether I can get these guys off the dime. So we finally finished after 6 months, Born to Run. Born to Run was like, this monstrosity of a record. I mean, there's things on there that you hear for 2 or 3 seconds, and they took us forever. And they're like string sections that come on for 3 or 4 seconds, and then they're gone. That's it. Just that little moment in time. That's it. Boom. So a lot of time and effort and energy was spent on that single song. The two of us go to meet with Steve Popovich, who was the head of promotion for Columbia Records. And when I walk in, Bruce didn't want to come up with me because I think he was just too afraid to face any suit, if you will. And this was a guy that I liked. I liked
Sure.
Steve. But he just didn't have. If he didn't love it, it would be a knife in Bruce's heart. Okay.
Right.
Bruce was putting all those eggs in that basket. I went up there, and of course, when I walk in, Steve is on the phone. He's got 2 phones on each ear. Back in the day, they used to have phones. Remember phones?
Sure.
And he had one on each ear talking to his promotion men all around the country, right? And I said, Steve, I'll come back. No, nonsense. Give me the tape. And then he goes back. He's talking while he's putting the tape on. He's talking to one of the promotion men out there in Chicago. So he listened to Born to Run and is blasting, and he's talking on the phone. I don't know how he's hearing who he's talking to. I don't know how he's hearing the record or paying attention to it. So when it finally ends, I said, well, what do you think? He says, well, I like the riff. He says, I don't know too much about anything else, Mike. I said, all right, look, I said, I'll get back to you in time. And I walked out, told Bruce. He was devastated. And what are we going to do now, Mike? I said, well, that's a good question. I don't know. I said, why don't you go home to Staten Island? Why don't you go home to Asbury Park? I'll go to my office. And if I think of anything, I'll get back to you. Well, just as I was entering my building, I did think of something. I said, supposing, since we made a load of friends at FM radio, I took the Born to Run master and sent that tape around to 50 of our friends in tertiary, secondary, primary markets. Okay. And that they went on it, and they went on it, and they did go on it, 50 of them. Okay. And when they went on it, it sent all the college kids running into the record stores to buy the album. There was no album. Okay. So this is the mortal sin that a guy like me can commit on behalf of a record company, is to give them the single before the album's in the store. Okay,
Right.
there's the cardinal sin. That's a mortal sin. All right. I knew that going in. And Bruce, when he heard me to tell him that that's what I was going to do, he says, I don't know what to expect. I said, well, that makes two of us. I don't know what to expect exactly either. What do you think I am? I can't see the future. I'm not prognosticating here. I'm just hoping that this works. Okay.
I mean, because at this point, you know, your thought is, what do I got to lose? Right. I've got to try something different.
Exactly.
And so
can't do it the conventional way.
Right. And so, and you knew you had something special. Like, did you think Born to Run was another level from the other songs that he had been doing?
Not so much the other songs, but what it was it was a heavier song, and right in your, Smash Mouth rock and roll, right in your face, still having his brand of sophisticated poetic lyrics. Okay. So, but it was a step up in every regard, really. I wouldn't say it was like better than all songs, because there was some. I mean, if you listen to New York City Serenade and you listen to some of these others, there are some incredible songs there, and some incredible statements, and some great atmosphere and whatever. But the fact is, yes, to be the first song off the album, and to try to make the album stand on the back of Born to Run success, and yes, it was that. It fulfilled those promises.
I've heard my first musical love was Brian Wilson and the Beach Boys.
Well, that's everybody's.
Yes, right. And so you hear stories of him doing Pet Sounds and Good Vibrations that same way, right? Spending hours on something that may only last 3 or 4 seconds on the album, right?
Yeah, seconds.
And so when I hear you telling that story, I think of that kind of that tapestry to speaking of Brill Building, right? With Carol King, but building that tapestry and building that, and you're like, in a lot of ways, I picture, a young Mike Appel taking, okay, I've got $100. I'm going to put it on one number on the roulette table and go.
Correct.
Here we go.
And throw the dice. That's right. Yes. Throw the dice. That is exactly what we did. And we did actually get lucky there, because when I say we got lucky, I got in hot soup first.
Yes, exactly. Right.
It didn't it didn't happen immediately. What happened was everybody called the local, promotion men for Columbia, saying, "Hey, what's this record on the radio?" And then it's not in the stores. All these store managers called, their local Columbia record, office, promotion office. And then it got back to, the heads of Columbia Records. And it wasn't just the heads of Columbia Records. It went above that. It went to, CBS.
Right.
Now, I'm not going to tell you the guy that called me, but he calls me. I pick up the phone and he says, "Mike," in that nice, quiet voice, "what are you doing?" That's what he says. And I go to start to explain it. The minute I start opening my mouth, "I know what you're trying to do, and I don't like it one bit, and you know it." And he said, "I can't believe you're doing this." He said, "You never put the record in the, on the radio before the record's in the stores." I said, "Well, you won't give me the money to do the record so I can put it in the store." So I get mad at him, right? And he said, "Mike, you're not listening to me." Click. Oops. Now I don't even have a chance to talk to him and say anything, and say, "Well, look, I can't even make amends." He's gone, right?
Yes.
Now I'm saying to myself, is the next thing I'm going to hear or the next thing I'm going to get a little note from the, inner council of the legal council of Columbia Records to Mike Appel, your services are no longer, warranted and necessary, okay, or wanted. And so I was very, very worried about getting such a thing. But at the moment, we had another thing to contend with. Bruce had to go play this gig at Brown University, and Brown University wanted me to allow them to have an interview with Bruce, and I said okay. I said, I called Bruce. I said, do it, this interview with the Brown University Press. They've been good to us. I think the college station played his music a lot. Et cetera, et cetera. So Bruce, Bruce was trying to help you. He wasn't being obstinate in any way whatsoever. So he goes and he does the interview. But before he does, I said, they just got this new president. His name is Erwin Siegelstein. He came from, the television division. I don't know if he's going to know anything. I don't know if he's going to be much help to us, getting our budget given to us. And, I don't know, man. I said, I really don't know. His name is Erwin Siegelstein. But I know, that's all I can tell you. He's the new guy, and we're going to have to deal with him. So that's it. Bruce goes, does the interview, does a great job with, at the college, his normal blitzkrieg, and boom.
Yeah.
Then I get a call from none other than Erwin Siegelstein the next day. I get on the phone with him. He says, my son goes to Brown University, Mike. And I say, what the hell is this going to be? And so he says, Bruce badmouthed me in the interview that he did yesterday with Brown University Press. And my son is a huge fan, and all of his friends are huge fans, and it made him look terrible. I said, I said to him, I got him. Okay. He's a good Jewish uncle. I have had a few myself, and they're great. When you get a good one, they're great. Okay. So anyway, I said, well, geez, I hate to tell you this, but I said, Bruce is going to do an interview at Rolling Stone. I want to make sure I can get a hold of him, make sure he doesn't say anything bad. Said, you get a hold of him and make sure he doesn't say anything bad. And I want to see you. I want to see Bruce. I want to see your lawyer tomorrow at Mercurio's for lunch. And let's get this thing together here. Okay, you hear me? No more Rolling Stone, baby. I said, no, I'll get a hold of him. There was no interview at Rolling
Right.
Stone.
Okay.
I didn't have to do anything. So I just figured, hey, well, strike while the iron's hot. You just advantage Appel. All of a sudden, when he said to me about his son, I said, that's it, advantage Appel. So I took advantage. And then the next day when we went to the lunch, he was this most buoyant character. And he was as absolutely as gracious a host as you'd want for lunch. And he said, no Rolling Stone interview, right? I said, no, you didn't hear of any, did you? He said, nope, I didn't. I said, it's not going to be one. He says, you can do your third album. I grant you that. I grant you the budget. No problem. And so we all sat down and had a wonderful lunch, and that was it. And that's how he got back to be able to do the rest of the songs, the other 8 songs that hadn't been done yet. And those 8. So what we had had to accomplish. And then, in the background, you have the beginnings of the lawyers getting in touch with my accountants, and, like as though I'm some thief. And it just says, oh boy, much ado over nothing.
Well,
but what can you do?
I was really impressed that in Bruce's autobiography, he says, this is my side of the story, but go read Mike's side of the story. He actually listed your book. And so I did. I went and read it, and I enjoyed your book immensely. And obviously, this is going to be hard, but let's forget financially. Did this personally cause you pain? Because you were one of Bruce's first cheerleaders. You believed in him. You believed in that magic, and to split up with him and then to see what happened. How long did it take you to adjust to that? And before we hit record, you shared some pretty insightful thoughts, and I hope you can repeat them.
Okay. Well, the thing is this, when when I got served papers in June or something like June or July
Yeah.
of I guess it was 1976. I went to Jules Kurz and he said, "Well, I know a lawyer. I can't do this for you. I'm not a litigator." He said, "You go to this guy, and he's one of those litigators, and he's a damn good one." I said, "Okay, whatever." I'm just saying to myself, I just got this, in the mail here, and now I know I've got absolutely problems to deal with,
Right.
and I don't know how I'm going to circumvent them or make it through that whole process. But in any case, I go over to Leonard Marks, and he says, when I walk in the door, he says, "Hand me those papers." I hand him the papers. He looks at them. He says, "You got any papers, any documents for Bruce?" I said, "Yes." He says, "Get them for me. Have them here tomorrow morning. It's a divorce." Just like that.
Mm.
And I said, "What do you mean it's a divorce? We just got the papers today. We haven't even negotiated anything yet. Nobody's talked to anybody. How can it be a divorce? How can it be over?" He says, "It's a divorce. I'm telling you, this is over. You can't go back." Well, I don't know if I could have gone back, actually, to tell you the truth. If I went to another lawyer, I don't know if I demanded it. I don't know if that was possible. Maybe things were too far gone, but maybe when Bruce finally signed off on that, that was it. He ain't going back either. So he doesn't want to look like a fool. I don't know. You never know what the other
Yes.
side's thinking or saying because you're not talking to them. Nobody's confiding in anybody. So the lawyer said, "Don't talk to him. Don't talk to this guy. Don't talk to that guy." You say, "Okay, whatever." And I just left his office bewildered. I went out into Central Park and I just stayed out all day. It was like 11 in the morning. I didn't go back to my office till 5 or 6. I don't even remember going back to my office. I may have just gone to my car and drove home. I just, you're what you put your heart and soul in. You gave up a lot, not only a lot of time, but I mean, you were betting on him to make it, and now he's made it, and now you aren't going to be able to, have any of the fruits of your own damn labor. You know what I mean? Without a fight. Yeah, maybe you get some kind of settlement here, and you'll get some sort of money out of it. But your history, your persona non grata, and that was quite bothersome to me. It was quite bothersome to me. I didn't like it. It's the first time it ever happened to me. I mean, first, of course, was Bruce a litigator before this? No. Was John Lando a litigator? I don't think so.
Yeah.
So all three of the actual principals never did this before.
Right.
You have all newbies going through this process. And it was going to cost us a lot of money. And it did cost us a lot of money, all of us. And it caused a lot of aggravation to all of us. Nobody got away without the aggravation. Everybody got it. But not too long after, things came into my life, books and philosophy came into my life that changed me forever. And they made me realize that Mike, you did your job. You were part of a trio that came into this world. You had things that you were going to do. John Lando had things he was going to do. Bruce Springsteen had things he was going to do. You were the guy that was supposed to get it off. This is what I finally deduced. And yet, John was the guy to take it the rest of the distance, which he's done, he did a handsomely good job, okay?
Yes.
Doing just that. Because I know that. I tell it to him all the time. When, I say, "Listen, I know what you did, buddy. Okay, you don't have to say a thing to Mike Appel. I already got it. Okay, I know the rough waters and the treachery of being Bruce Springsteen's manager, producer, whatever you want to call yourself. That's it. That's a tough gig. Everybody's looking to stab you. They're looking to, get in there, on the inside and make a wedge between you. That's why I almost never, if I do something that I want Bruce to know, I send it to him too. so that everybody gets something. So John never thinks I'm trying to be cute and go behind his back, pull some kind of nonsense,
Because you
Not
understand,
once.
right? Like you understand that
Yeah.
relationship because you've been
Yeah.
there. And you mentioned the divorce, right? Like I was the first wife, so I am not going to get around between the second wife and the second spouse,
That's
right?
that's
I,
exactly right. That's
I
exactly
think
right.
that, yeah, that makes sense.
It did make sense to me. And I said, first of all, I have to have my own integrity.
Yeah.
If John thinks I'm like some sleazebag, how the hell am I ever going to actually deal with this guy?
Yeah.
I can't deal with this guy like that. It has to be on, above board, all the way down the line. If he doesn't like something, then John, come on, tell me what it is you don't like, and we'll have it out, okay? And then boom, 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 until we're both satisfied.
And you mentioned earlier that before we hit record, you said that one of the things you think may have hurt you is John and you had not had a chance to get to know each other, that you
Right.
didn't have a chance for you to understand him and where he was coming from, and for him to understand you and where you're coming from. Because obviously both of you cared about Bruce, not just as a person, but as an artist.
Right. There's no question about that. I felt that if he had known me, and maybe there had been no Bruce Springsteen in his life, in either of our lives, and we just ran into each other somewhere. Some lawyer put us together and said, "Hey, why don't you guys maybe get together and form a
Yeah.
team?" And blah 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 blah. We might have hit it off fantastic and become great friends, and did God knows what. Okay,
Sure.
but the fact is that didn't happen, and we didn't have the advantage of even that happening, or him coming to me and saying, maybe Mike, maybe you could find a place for me here or something like that. It
Yeah.
was like, Bruce wants me to now be his producer. Maybe you should just maybe be the manager from here on out. And then the lawyer comes in and says, oh, well, yeah, instead of taking 20%, maybe we can have you take 10%. And it's like, hey, Philip, we haven't gotten this guy to first, we got him. Yes. Well, I shouldn't say that. We got him to first base now. Now you want me to go take a lesser, cut me in
Sure.
half, take away the production, to cut the management in half, and take the publishing away too. Are you, I don't have to do that without making you struggle for it, okay? And the guy, their attorney, I don't know, his attorney. It's
Sure.
not John. In fact, it wasn't even John Landau's attorney I'm talking about. The attorney I'm talking about, I'm not going to mention his name. I'm just going to say that he was really, a nasty individual. In other words, my lawyer was a nasty individual in certain ways, but he was a livable guy. But
Yeah.
this guy was really not a livable guy. This guy was like kind of like a dirty pool player.
Well,
I just didn't.
yeah.
I just couldn't. I mean, yeah, you can always say he's doing the best he can for his client. I said there is a point when you're doing that, and then there's a point when I know that that what you're talking about is all bullshit. It's absolutely bullshit. I'm not guilty of any of this shit, and yet you're
Yeah.
trying to pretend making me think that I'm guilty when I know I'm not guilty. So don't waste your breath on me, Jack. Waste it, save it for the judge. So
Well,
save it for your depositions.
and as you said, correct, that, and I don't mean this to hurt anyone's feelings, right? But financially, there is a quick settlement doesn't help attorneys. Now, and I'm sure there are wonderful attorneys out there that have their best interests, their clients, but there are other attorneys that billable hours and what you can do, right? Like making things
Absolutely.
simple doesn't make you as much money.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
No question about it. I mean, that was a lesson I learned. I mean,
Yeah.
I've learned a number of lessons, I mean, I got ripped off by D. Anthony, I mean, it definitely did. I mean, really, D was not, D said, he would take care of us and everything like that, and he didn't.
Yeah.
When it came to Sir Lord Baldwin, he took the production money and ran away with it.
Yeah.
But in any case, that's okay. I mean, that's your education. You don't go to college to be in the music business.
Right.
you go into the music business and then you take your lumps, and that's your college education. And you get smart as you go along, and you can't get away from that.
How was your journey for, as I'll use your words, divorce happens, you see Bruce's career, you go off and do other things creatively as well. When did you become zen with this? When did you become to understand, well, I did my part, and now then, you know,
1980,
1980, really?
February of 1980, I suddenly, like you want to use the word Zen, that's fine. Even though it's not.
No.
The fact is, it's a sacred sort of situation. You can't even look at it in terms like, hey, you lost the money. It's like you can't even talk to me like that. It's almost like,
Yeah.
you don't understand me at all, fella. I mean, you think that I'm somehow mad that I didn't get this and I didn't get that. I'm not looking for that kind of, glory. I was never looking. I mean, Bruce may have even thought that I had designs on being an artist. I gave that up. I don't know. I guess I didn't tell you. Doug Morris, I guess you know Doug Morris, who he is. I mean, I guess the biggest chairman, CEO of all the biggest, record conglomerates
Yes.
there are, from Universal, Sony to Warner's. But he was my big backer. He was Mike Appel to Bruce Springsteen. I was
Okay.
Bruce Springsteen back in the day. He was the guy. Doug Mars backed me. And one day I was one of the first record artists to be released on his new record label.
Okay.
I had already cut the song for it. I already sung it. Okay. And I walked in to his office. I said, "Hey, Doug, look, I got bad news, Doug." I said, "I found a guy that I want to back 100%. I don't want to, pursue a career on my own anymore. I'm giving that up. I just want to go work on this guy, because this guy is really different and really top of the pops, if you want to use that terminology. And I'm sorry, but that's what I got to do. I got to do that." He said, "Well, what the hell? You're giving up? You're throwing away your whole career for this guy? Who the hell is this guy? What's his name?" So I say, "Bruce Springsteen." He said, "I never heard of him." I said, "You will." And then I just did an about face and I left. And of course, when I ran into Doug, when Bruce was being inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I went into the men's room and I heard something, "Hey, Mike, hey, Mike." It was Doug. So we went through it. He told me the story once again that I just told you.
Yeah.
And then we went back outside, the boys' room. But it was. He said, I always tell you that story every time I see it, and I tell other people that story, because how many times does that happen in an executive's life? And Doug was a guy that was a wonderful guy. He wrote Sweet Talking Guy for the Chiffons. I mean, he was a writer. That's what I mean about the guys back then. They were writers. They knew how to write charts. They could manage people. They could produce people. They know how to sell things and promote things, and still somehow they could, be one person to do all those different chores. Doug was one of those guys. He's not a suit. He's a guy that does know music, and he does gravitate towards it. And a good friend right to this day, this very day.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, it was just a special time in my life. But again, I knew that I was born to do certain things too, and I'm getting to those things now. It's just that to do the things that I need to be done, I needed to mature not only in the facets, let's say, of Broadway, and writing books, and what kind of books I want to write, and how do I find the what should I say, the nuance of Mike Appel's artistry. How do I find that, and how do I nurture that to make me a particular type? That, oh, that must be a Mike Appel thing, or Mike Appel said that. To find that uniqueness. And that's what's taken so damn long. And believe me, like I said, for a guy who has a short temper when it comes to patience, I've had to wait a long time.
So what's next for you? Tell me a little bit about what you've got on you're working on.
Well, I have a few projects I can't go into
I understand.
because they involve, big superstars
Okay.
and super personalities. And I don't want to say anything to those things are
Okay.
tied up, and maybe there'll be a joint statement. And I don't want to be talking out of school about things and,
Get you.
that I don't know about. And you're a good guy, you're a sweet guy. But I have to just shut
Well,
my
I'll
mouth.
tell you what, when they're
Easy.
ready to announce, you can come back and you can promote the hell out of
Hey,
it.
there
I
you
love
go.
that. Yeah.
There you go. There you go.
So
That's true. But
what,
I do have my musical. I do have my musical.
yeah, tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, Stage Door Johnny. I've always been a guy that calls it as I see it.
Yeah.
And I haven't heard a good record in I don't know when. I don't know, 30, 40 years. I don't know.
Okay.
Like John Landau said to me, I don't know, maybe it was 10 years ago. He said this to me. I was saying to him, listen, I listen to new groups all the time. I said, I never hear anything, John. I never hear anything. He said, well, that's why I only had my, tape recorder only up to 1975. I haven't recorded anything after 1975. So I had to laugh at that. But that was me. You see, it's things like that. When he says things like that to me, it makes me think that we could have been great friends because he's like minds, think alike, and they can get along well. When they're at loggerheads, they can't. But I got along with John pretty good when it came to all of the songs. We didn't have too many fights over things. I mean, there's a couple of songs on Born to Run, Linda Let Me Be the One, and Lonely Night in the Park that didn't make the final cut on the album. And I think that John and Bruce did hope that I would like them because I think they wanted to pursue those things as perhaps pop, chances, pop suggestions that might, if they can do it, maybe work it out, maybe make it work.
Yeah.
But they seem to be so far left of center from where we were at the moment that I finally heard those things. It was like I wasn't hearing some fantastic pop rock songs, and I didn't know how they could make those two things like anything remotely like that. So I said, I don't think so, fellas. I just don't think they belong. And then there was the one on the Meeting Across the River, where Bruce was a little surprised that I liked it. He said, I got this new song. I want to play it for you. Okay, great. Sit down. He sits down at the piano. I'm sitting down at the piano stool. He goes through the song. I said, I absolutely love it. He says, why? I said, I'll tell you why. It reminds me of Naked City and late night on the Untouchables show after a mob hit and they blow that lonely saxophone. I said, there's something about the chord changes of the way you sing the song that makes me think that. And that's all I can say. That's why. Okay, that's why.
Mike, there is a collection of short stories that are all based on that song, that they published, that short mystery writers wrote, because that is such a cinematic song. That's good. Obviously my wife's name is Linda, so I always joke at Linda Let Me Be the One. She rolls her eyes, but I always, on our anniversary, I go, and I'm so glad Linda did let me be the one. So one of my listeners wanted to know specifically about Cherokee Queen. He said there are certain songs, right, that when you guys were splitting up, you kept the rights for, and he specifically is just curious. That's his itch. And I said, well, I'll ask Mike about it, but I don't know if Mike will have any stories to tell.
About Cherokee Queen?
Yes.
I really don't have anything to say about it. I wasn't anything that I remember or even arguing about, or saying that I must have this, and that doesn't strike a chord with me. I don't know quite what to say about it. That's all.
Okay, that's fine. the when you, and I've taken so much of your time, I appreciate it. When you saw, did you have the sense of a proud parent when you saw Bruce going into the Hall of Fame? And I guess that's a dumb question, but what when you think back on your experiences, what are your thoughts?
Well, you see, if you had been at that event, you would have realized what a star-studded event it really was.
Yeah.
I mean, I was sitting at a table right next to Wilson Pickett, Sir George Martin, uh, Chris White from Chrysalis Records, and there was one other person, but I can't remember who it was. But all of them, it's all star-studded guys. I mean, I even went, got over and whispered into Wilson Pickett's ears. I said to him, "Thank you, Wilson Pickett, for the midnight hour." And he said, "God bless you, son. God bless you. God bless you, my man. God bless you." and then later on, I spoke to Bruce because Bruce did Midnight Hour with Wilson Pickett on stage with the E Street Band.
Yeah.
And I actually spoke to Bruce after he did that. And he said, "Mike," he said, "the most fun I had on stage with Wilson Pickett was when he yelled, 'Bruce, Bruce,' in that raspy voice of Wilson Pickett. When he did that, he said, 'Yeah, I'm on stage with Wilson Pickett and he's calling my name.'" And it meant a lot. And when you think of Funky Broadway and all the great records that guy sung, and Land of a Thousand Dances, all those, the great his vocals were so great. The way they screamed. I mean, yeah, James Brown too. You say the same thing about James Brown, and you just fell in love with those guys. Like you just fell in love with those guys. I don't know what to say, but it come full circle that night to some extent. And I was very, very happy to be there and to enjoy the personalities that I had a chance to speak to, and the people that were, very thankful that I discovered the guy that I discovered, and that we hung in there with him until he made it. But how many Bruce Springsteens walking around? Not too many.
No, not too many.
Not too many.
All right. I honestly believe, right, that you never know, there's alternate realities that you could talk about, but there is, I mean, I was not over exaggerating when I say, when you talk about a founding father, we would not have had, I would think, this career without your nurturing him and your perseverance and your drive. And for all of us fans, as we're recording this, there's rumors that they may renounce a tour tomorrow, and we're all ecstatic. And so, Mike, I just want to say thank you for that. I thank you for all of that.
Well, I thank you for the compliment. It doesn't get any bigger or better than that. And I'm honored that you feel that way, because it's like I always say, I can match Bruce in the managerial area and in the production area and the promotion area if he delivers every night on stage. Does Bruce Springsteen deliver every night on stage for 4 hours straight everywhere on every city on the globe? Yes, he does. So Mike, get off your duff. Okay, you got work to do. And that's the way I looked at it, man.
Yeah.
He's doing it up there. I'm doing it over here. And that's
nice.
all of us do. You got to go do it. And it takes two to tango, and it did.
Yes. All right. Before I get to the Mary question, any final thoughts you want to share to my listeners?
Well, it's what I took up in my musical. I believe that there are some great musicians out there. I believe that there's talent out there, but they are lost. They're just roaming around in empty canyons with no, body to lead them anywhere. There are no Pied Pipers. There are no Bruce Springsteens leading them. Bruce Springsteen's part of the classic rock era. But guys, you got to go back there, because if you don't learn your history. Like Bruce used to always say, Mike, I know my history. He did know his history. He paid attention to his history. He learned those historical songs, those historical riffs, how they were put together, these horn sections, this, blah, 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 blah. He did it. How many years has he been touring his butt off, and how many cities and how many hours has he been rehearsing and on that damn stage? Forget about in the studio and writing time and rehearsing with the band, just being on the stage doing a real live gig. Huh? For 50 years, 4 hours a night? Hello? It's like you get a kid who's 1/3 his age, who can't sing an hour.
Yes.
Bruce is on there for 4 hours straight. So it's no joke. This guy's the real deal. I mean, he's as real as it gets, man. And we're guys that we're tough guys too. We could play. We were good. All right. So he comes from guys that know their stuff. And know other guys' stuff. Okay. So he was in good hands. He was in good hands for as long as I had him. He was in good hands, and he's been in good hands ever since. It's as simple as.
I love that. All right. So Jay Armstrong, if you are listening to this podcast because you wanted to hear Mike's story, I hope you were as entertained as I was. I end every podcast with a question that Jay Armstrong, he is an honors English teacher and in the Philadelphia area, and he would take the song Thunder Road and would break apart for his seniors. They would look at all the lyrics. They would look at the imagery Bruce used, and they would compare it to Robert Frost, The Road Not Taken. And then he would ask his class at the end of the day, does Mary get in the car? So Mike, that's your question. Does Mary get in the car at the end of Thunder Road?
She'd be a fool if she didn't.
Well said, sir. Well said. If someone wants to reach you or to follow you, what's the best way?
I guess it's just to go to the website, and you can leave an email, and I get them all, and I try to respond to all of them. I don't think I've ever not responded to an email.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mike. I appreciate it. I am honored that we've gotten to spend some time together. I will say again, all that history that Bruce learned, you were a big part of that, and you were part of the thing that brought us this beauty. And for that, I am forever grateful. Long life, great success to you, my friend. You are just a treasure as well. And let's do this again sometime.
We will, definitely.
Listeners, you go get vaccinated, go get boosted, go be kind to each other, because that's how we're going to get through this. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, listeners. And we'll talk to you soon. Goodbye.
Cheers.
And we're out. Doing a podcast at times can be a one-way conversation, and I hate that. So please let me know what you like and don't like about the work I'm doing. You can reach the podcast via email at setlistingbruce@gmail.com. The show is on Twitter at setlistingbruce, and my personal Twitter is at jessejacksondfw. We have a website, www.setlistingbruce.com. From there, you can find links to other Springsteen podcasts, as well as other music-themed podcasts. We have a page devoted to our own SLB All-Star Band. These are guests who have been on the podcast more than 3 times. There is a link to our store where you can purchase Set Listing Bruce shirts, as well as a Mary Question t-shirt. There is a link to our Patreon page where you can sign up to help support the podcast financially. We have different levels and different rewards based on your support. If you don't have any extra cash, and right now, who does, you can support the podcast by subscribing via your favorite podcast player and leaving us a review. The more reviews we have, the easier it is for people to find us. And please tell a friend about the podcast, especially if they love Bruce or music, because it will make a difference.
You just heard the fun talking, hard rocking, music loving, album ranking, fan thinking, joy spreading, lyric reading, story sharing podcast that is the one, the only Set Listing Bruce. The theme for Set Listing Bruce was written by David Rosen Used by permission.